Well, welcome back. Understanding the Times 2018, meeting here late September in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'm just about to feature another one of my speakers, Eric Barger, and I've worked with Eric now for about 10 years. Eric, glad you could stop in here.
That's great, Jan.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about at our conference this weekend, and it's about this whole invasion of privacy, which you really got my attention when you started talking about this some 6 months ago, maybe. And I know you've done research even much before that. And I think Christians have no idea how they are being surveilled, how
Yeah.
they are being, whether it be their phone, whether it be even more blatant than that through Alexa and these various gadgets. So give them another warning.
Well, we kind of got an idea when the whole NSA scandal broke a few years ago. And we found out that there was some surveillance going on, but it became so muddy very quickly about how much it was and what was happening that a lot of us have forgotten, or maybe the news bypassed us back then. But we're being surveilled all the time, and so our privacy and eventually our ability to be able to receive truth or receive all the facts and to be able to speak and have free speech, all those things are kind of balled together. And as you know, in this message I've got and what we did on radio and what I'm doing here at the conference, it kind of works all together: our privacy, our free speech, and of course the surveillance, all that is happening around us.
Well, in the wrong hands, I mean, obviously this can all become a Frankenstein in the wrong hands, and I think you and I are interested in how the Antichrist could step in and abuse, and will abuse all of this surveillance, this invasion. And we're talking about that with one of my other speakers as well, Billy Crone.
Right.
Artificial intelligence, and your issues cross over a little bit, but the whole point of it is we've had an explosion of technology in the last 50 years. In the right hands, it's wonderful. It gets the gospel around the world in one click of a mouse. The gospel is sent to the four corners. In the wrong hands, it's really dangerous.
It is, and the thing is that technology is not going to slow down. It's going to speed up, and it is speeding up, and there's so much coming at us that none of us can keep track of it. Billy and I sat last evening and talked about this, how fast the speed up of not only the information coming at us that we cannot assimilate, but also the way in which it's transferred and the other things. I believe there are probably, and I don't want people to be paranoid about this, I'm not, but I believe, knowing what I know about this stuff, that there is probably technology out there right now that we just have no idea, that will take our breath away when we find out what's going on about it. Some of it, as you pointed out, can be used to spread the gospel, and some of it will be used at the hands of Antichrist. I feel without any doubt that's the case, that this system of surveillance in particular is being built, and they don't realize it. The people who are involved with it don't realize it. They are using the technology. They see it as great steps ahead for mankind, but eventually Antichrist will use that system.
So privacy really is just a total thing of the past. There's no such thing as privacy.
I read in Time magazine, it's right in the beginning slides of my message on my DVD series, that privacy is only an illusion.
Okay.
And it was an article from about 5 years ago on surveillance. It was called The Surveillance State.
Okay. So, how do you warn, particularly Christians? I mean, all right, many of them, at the very least, have an iPhone. It's spying on them. As we say that, if they haven't heard radio, if they haven't heard any of your presentations, that's new news to them.
Yeah.
Their cell phone is spying on them.
Yeah, and not only is it just what we're saying, but it's the things we've entered into our accounts.
Thank you.
And it's also the idea of where we are, the location, whether location is turned on or off on the phone, frankly, is only material about the apps you have. Because, for example, in the case of Google with Android phones, they are aware of where your phone is, even if it's on airplane mode and it's never been activated.
Never been activated.
And that's pretty. That's shocking when you come to that realization that phone is sending a signal. As soon as you put it into a Wi-Fi signal or activate it so that cell towers can pick it up, then that's immediately sending information back to Google. And Google gets that so they can then advertise to you. They want to use it for advertising, but somebody eventually is going to use that to actually see where people are and surveil them. And of course, it'll all be about the categories, classifications of people, and so on.
So what was the most shocking thing that you found in your research on surveillance and the intrusion? What was the most shocking thing? And quite frankly, I've been through 2-3 hours of some of your findings, and I could pick out a dozen things that would shock the daylights out of me.
The one thing that I have repeated to people over and over when they've asked me what I'm working on or what's new is when we get in a conversation about this, I will say I thought I was pretty well read. I had researched a lot. I had looked at things that were affecting Christians around the world. I really didn't understand how deep and how large the surveillance system of China is.
Of China?
China.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a model that sadly some American cities are using to see how they can use the same kind of system. And of course the idea and the way it'll be promoted to the public is that this is going to deter crime and be able to find dementia patients easier by having all the cameras, or runaway kids, or you can imagine any of these kind of things. But when I saw what China is doing with about 200 million cameras in use today, and they say by 2020, they're saying outright they're going to have 670 million closed circuit TV cameras for surveillance in China. You won't be able to go anywhere in that country out of doors, and sometimes indoors, without the government knowing. And of course, they have a system of points that if you do the right things in their eyes as a citizen, then you get perks such as low interest loans, and your children get better education, and you're able to purchase property and maybe pay less for it, those kind of things, and travel further away from your home. But if you don't do the right things, and if you're not a good citizen to them, which would mean you're somehow against the government, that you may be a resistor to the communist government, well, your points are either nothing and you're out of the system. That means you can hardly do anything freely, or it's so low that it hardly matters. So they have this system of looking at people and how they act, and it's to keep everybody in line. And that's what some of the surveillance cameras are all about.
Well, and I came across this article tying in kind of a little bit with what you're saying anyway. Stalin, Hitler, Mao would dream about Google's power over our thoughts. And the article went on to say the kind of power that you're talking about, the kind of power kings, emperors, and even dictators of yesteryear would envy if they knew it existed. And can you imagine, I mean, all that Hitler accomplished without technology and without the invasion of privacy, what these men could have done with it. Of course, the Antichrist will do all of that and more.
That's right.
But they didn't have access to some of the things that we're talking about today, and had they, maybe Hitler could have taken over the entire globe.
Well, my bottom line is that Hitler could have controlled an area of the world, and Mao an area of the world. Any other dictator, go back in history, only an area, and smaller as time as you go back in time. But with this system, Antichrist, this is the first time in history, I believe we can honestly say, Antichrist could come and he could control the world because of the surveillance, because of the ability, and that ability is being strengthened all the time by the technology. It's getting faster, smaller, and easier to put up. And Jan, back to the question you asked too. This was done in November 2017, so a little less than a year ago as of our day today. There was a BBC reporter that took on an identity card from China, as every citizen over there has. He had his picture taken in a police station. He became part of their system for a day as an experiment. They turned him loose with the driver, and he could go anywhere he wanted to see how long it would take them to find him. 7 minutes.
Okay.
And surveillance cameras picked him up, and he was surrounded by a number of Chinese policemen in this drill.
Okay.
So that tells you that's where they've been. But where they're going, they're going to have twice the cameras they have now. Actually, double the cameras they have now. That's maybe a better way to put it.
Now, Eric, you have mentioned that you believe that the entire tech problem is helping to build world government. What do you mean by that?
Well, again, because of the ability to be able to control those who are dissident, I think we have great trouble coming before Antichrist. Now, I don't know when he's coming.
Sure.
I'm looking for Jesus Christ, not Antichrist. And I think that's a point we need to say to people is that we're looking for Jesus, not the Antichrist. But it's interesting to see all these markers that tell us Antichrist could come. That means Jesus could come even quicker.
Absolutely.
And to understand that and to understand what is going on around us, I think global government is being formed, and that idea has been out there a long time, as you well know.
Oh, yeah.
You're very versed in it, and we've talked about it. You and I have written and talked about it for all these years. And so I believe that will be kind of in place, but they'll be without that single thing they need, which is a charismatic and very strong leader, someone that the world can rally around. And could it be that the rapture of the church would be the very thing that would coalesce the world to follow somebody, because they've hit this event where all the people, not all, but many of the people are missing. In other words, a lot of people, friends, family members, and they've had an economic collapse along with it. So, you can imagine all these scenarios that would give Antichrist that thing that he needs to be catapulted to the top, and it's his duty, of course, to help mankind. And
and we don't know. Antichrist could be 2 weeks away, could be 2 years, 20 years. So in the meantime, before Antichrist's kingdom, what kind of a warning would you give to those viewing this?
Sure. Well, I'm sure people watching are saying, well, wait a second, why are you talking about this? Because we're going to be gone, and what do we have to fear about this? And well, folks, there are going to be records about who we were and who we were connected to. If you're on Facebook, they know who all your relatives are and all your friends are. Google the same way. They know where you are, who you are, and who you are now. Well, if we're gone, I believe there are going to be people left behind, sadly, and there's going to be repercussions to them because of their connection to us today. And so understand, the more of our privacy and the more of the intimacy of our information about who we are as people, the more that's given away. I believe that other people will pay the price for that eventually. Like we just said, I'm not looking for Antichrist. I'm looking for Jesus Christ. We want to see every single person saved that we can. And if there was ever a time and day that we should be actively evangelizing and being concerned about, being vigilant about the Great Commission in Matthew 28, it's today. But all that we see that's happening around us, that's going to come back, and I believe there's going to be a price to pay in the lives of others. And so maybe that's my concern, thinking about unsaved loved ones and friends that I have that are connected to me now. What will life be like for them if suddenly we're gone, but they were supposed to be, or supposedly, connected to me somehow? Well, it's all these scenarios, and we could just build almost a novel out of it if you wanted to, but this will be a real life event, I believe, once the church is taken.
Why don't you just give an illustration or two of how you've been encroached? Your on your cell phone, your pictures, things like that.
That's the one, where I got into this, I knew that there was surveillance going on, and I'd read a little bit about the ability to do so and the technology. But this is last fall, I took a picture of one of my board members at a conference, and just a simple picture, and that was all there was to it. I didn't send it to anybody. I just showed it to him and somebody else, and we were talking, kind of joking about it. Well, about 3 weeks later, I got the picture sent back to me by Google, and they said, we just want you to know that we're keeping your pictures safe. Well, I had no idea, but yet I did, in the back of my mind, remember that when I signed the user agreement, I gave a whole lot of stuff away, but I wasn't sure what it was down in the little tiny fine print at the bottom of the page. We're not taking time to read those things. We better. About a month or two after that occasion, I got another picture back that I'd taken, and that one I'd sent to my daughter and my granddaughters and to my wife. I was up on top of a mountain pass in Washington State. It was a beautiful day. I took a picture. I got that one back the same way. And I began to realize, and I began to search what else Google has on me. Well, they have every place I've been with my phone. They can tell whether I'm walking or driving. They know the time I got out of car and began to walk because of the way the phone sends signal, if you will. They know all of that. They know, of course, my addresses, my cell phone address, email addresses, all of those kind of things. They know all of my texts and all of my emails. They have access to them. You can go and download everything that Facebook and Google both have on you personally, on your account. You can go and find out what it is. I've done it, and I was shocked in seeing all the things they had. It made me realize that I have no privacy.
Yeah.
And along with it, I have probably sacrificed my own security, and I don't mean my physical security that would cause someone to come after me in that way. I mean in the way that electronically someone that wanted to could then track and try to actually crack codes, break into accounts, get passwords, those kind of things. We need to be thinking about this. And it's not to make people paranoid, but I think it's better to think about it now than after the fact when all that information is already out of our hands and in someone else's hands.
Well, Eric, I personally want to thank you for alerting the Christian community to this. I don't think they're that aware. I think they think the things they're using would be pretty harmless. They're convenient. You can have Alexa set your thermostat. That's really great.
Turn your
Cool.
lights off,
Yeah.
close your garage door.
What's wrong with that?
Sure.
What on earth is wrong
and how
with that?
convenient, and that's it. And we've sold our soul for that convenience.
Great convenience out
Yeah.
there, but there's the dark side of this convenience, and that's what we're warning against, folks.
Yeah.
And in the wrong hands, this becomes a Frankenstein monster. In the wrong hands. Now, the church is gone when Antichrist reigns, so you can shrug all of this off if you'd like.
Right.
I think that might be a foolish thing to do, and Eric's simply sounding a warning. And you're speaking on this topic this
Yes.
weekend, and I think you've got a couple DVD set coming out in a month or so.
Right.
So you can visit ericbarger.com, folks, and find out a lot more. Eric, our time is gone, but this is a good tease, and I mean, it's important, I feel, that Christians wake up to this issue. I was awakened heavily through you, and then I did some research on my own,
Sure.
but I think it's time Christians wake up, because this is nothing to play with. The genie is out of the bottle.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Our phones are listening all the time.
Yeah.
Alexa or Google Home are listening all the time, and there's many other
right.
units coming, by the
That's
way.
right.
Facebook's going to have
That's
one.
right. Mhm.
Amazon, and of course, has all these different models. Well, they're listening. We better listen and understand what's happening, and maybe,
Yeah.
above all, realize the day that we're in and what some of this means.
Thank you for coming in.